Although it should go without saying, the absolute most important factor for achieving razor-sharp abs is dialing in your nutrition. That means having a balanced diet you can sustain that leads you to achieve a calorie deficit, burning more calories than you consume, so that you can burn fat. Even when following a proper diet, however, you may still end up in a situation where you're relatively lean, with your top 4 abs visible, but the lower abs still nowhere in sight. If this is the case, here's the simple solution. Follow an exercise program that emphasizes the lower regions of your core. But before we get into what those exercises are, allow me to briefly explain the anatomy of the core. The core is made up of 4 primary muscles: the external obliques, the internal obliques, the rectus abdominis, and the transverse abdominis. That said, the actual functions of the core muscles are quite simple. First, they're responsible for stabilization of the spine. Thus, whenever we're flexing our abs to stabilize our posture during heavy lifts, we aren't just strengthening our core, we're also building the muscles involved. Second, and more obvious, the superficial core muscles are responsible for flexion of the spine. Think about a crunching motion where we're bending forward to flex the abs. And although the obliques are involved in stabilization and flexion of the spine as well, they also play a larger role in lateral flexion of the spine as well as rotation of the trunk. Hence why we see gym goers performing endless amounts of side bends and bicycle crunches. So although there's no real way to isolate just one area of the core, there are exercises you can perform to emphasize one portion of the abs over the other. For example, to hit the upper abs, it's best to use movements that bring the upper body towards the center, like in a crunch. And to hit the lower abs more, it's best to use movements that bring the pelvis up towards the chest, like in a leg raise. With that last point in mind, let's jump into the only 3 lower ab exercises you need for sharper abs. Exercise number 1, hanging leg raises. According to research, the hanging leg raise is not only one of the best movements for your lower abs, but also your entire rectus abdominis. Several studies support that the hanging leg raise activates your rectus abdominis more than most, if not all, other ab exercises. But there's one major problem that most lifters experience when performing this exercise. You may have noticed that you don't even feel the hanging leg raise in the abs. Many guys feel this exercise in the hip flexors. In fact, research supports that when there is hip flexion or bent hips, the hip flexors will be activated. As the name suggests, the hip flexors are a group of muscles that flex the hip. Since lower ab exercises tend to include bending the hips, it's very easy to activate them instead of the lower abs. The true reason that the abs are activated in the hanging leg raise or in similar movements is because the pelvis is going through a posterior pelvic tilt. Basically, the pelvis is tucking under you while the legs simply follow. Most guys unintentionally lift their knees straight up just because it feels more natural. But the problem is they're using the hip flexors to lift the knees instead of using the lower abs to tuck the pelvis under them. To combat this, try not to let your body relax at the bottom of the movement. Instead, try to keep the pelvis in a posterior tilt. If your legs wind up slightly in front of your body at the bottom, you're doing it correctly. Exercise number 2, leg raise to hip thrust. The second exercise to hit the lower abs is a combination of 2 movements. The first part is the leg raise. It seems straightforward, but there's another common issue that can remove tension from the abs. Like mentioned previously, when your lower back is arched, the tension will go from your abs to your hip flexors. Here's what I recommend. Drop down and try this exercise on the floor. If your lower back arches so that it's not flush with the floor, simply contract your abs and squeeze your glutes. This will cause your rib cage to drop and the pelvis to tuck under you, thus activating your abs. If you drop your legs too low, you'll find that the back will automatically arch. This is why it's important that we stop several inches before the feet touch the floor. The second part of the movement is the hip thrust at the end. Although the leg raise already hits the lower abdominals plenty, there's still room for a more shortened contraction. To do this, simply squeeze the abs and slightly lift the hips off the floor. If you did it correctly, you'll feel a powerful contraction in your core. Exercise number 3, double crunch. Finally, the double crunch is an exercise that kills two birds with one stone. Like I mentioned, the crunching movement emphasizes the upper abs and the leg raise movement emphasizes the lower abs. The double crunch includes both parts. In a 2008 study, participants performed 4 different ab exercises, one being the double crunch, or as they labeled it, the double leg thrust. Research showed that the double leg thrust was one of the most effective for stimulating the abs. To make this exercise even more effective, try slowing down the lowering portion to add tension and make it more challenging. And once you've mastered the body weight variation, try adding a small dumbbell between your feet for resistance. So there you have it, the only 3 lower ab exercises you need for V-cut abdominals. Remember, these are 3 staple movements to build those lower ab muscles, but unless you achieve a certain level of leanness, they'll never be visible. That's why you should always keep in mind that a proper nutrition plan causing you to be in a calorie deficit and burn fat is necessary. Did you find this video helpful? If so, click the like button below as it'll truly help out the channel. Also, if you're an intermediate or advanced lifter who's looking to get absolutely shredded without cutting out your favorite foods or doing hours of cardio each week, grab a copy of my brand new program, Shredded 12 Fat Loss. This is the only science-based fat loss program of its kind that protects your hard-earned muscle mass and strength and gives you a shredded physique in just 12 weeks. And right now, you can get an additional 25% off by using the coupon code RIPPED25. If you want to learn more, click the link in the description below. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe for more videos and don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss the next one. Peace.